tow to Mexican territory, and then they would enroll them in the Bracero program and bring them back to where they found them. And so the Bracero program doubled in size during this time. So they got rid of the illegal problem by simply making all the undocumented immigrants they found into legal Braceros. Nonetheless, they had this worked. They asserted that the problem went away, and the public believed it. This process of bringing them to Mexico is called drying out. Right. Now, as I mentioned before, there's a connection between the civil rights and immigration law, but also civil rights and the Cold War. And the obvious connection is this: that prejudicial, discriminatory policies in the United States made for bad propaganda abroad. In this 1946 article in the PG Times and Herald, the issue was a lynching in Monroe, Georgia, in 1946 of George Dorsey and 3 others, including his wife. It was as gruesome as any lynching could be. There were at least 60 bullets from lots of different guns that were used. And to top it all off, Dorsey had just returned from 5 years of service in the U.S. Army, helping to defeat fascism. So this was a big, obviously, a propaganda nightmare. And you can see how it played across the world. It was obvious. And the color bar is the greatest propaganda gift any country could give the Kremlin, in its persistent bid for the affections of the colored races of the world. And recall, this is a period of decolonization, so this kind of stuff mattered. The United States cared whether, well, I don't know, Ceylon and Fiji were countries that they really, really cared about. But a lot of countries really cared about whether they were going to align with the Soviets or not. Remember the Vietnam War and the Korean War. All that was all about that. So this propaganda was, of some importance. It's also the case that when the civil rights movement got started, there's another piece of Cold War where the Cold War intersects, and that's that the civil rights movement had actual, real, live communists and socialists in it. Socialists had unwaveringly espoused racial equality, always. They thought that this is part of Marxist thought, certainly, that the class is what matters and not race. And not race and not nationality, it was all about class. And so communists and socialists have always been at the forefront of the movement for racial equality. They were there then in the 1950s as well. And Martin Luther King, who was famously investigated by J. Edgar Hoover, had to break with some important backers who were communists, but were important advisors. He had to maintain a whole lot of distance from them. The NAACP, as well as the Southern Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, all had to purge their ranks of known communists. So in that sense, the Cold War perhaps worked against civil rights. So I'm saying that in a sense it can cut both ways. But even the fear of communism cuts both ways, because while on the one hand we're worried about the propaganda, it's also, particularly in the hysterical period of the Cold War, it's not okay to criticize the United States. So while we don't want these kinds of headlines in Fiji, we don't want these kinds of headlines in Ceylon, we also don't want people in the United States to say, to mention this stuff, right? So you see how the overlay of the Cold War, the international picture, creates this distortion field for civil rights movement. The Kennedy administration is very much like the Eisenhower administration, and like the Truman administration, in that they are internationalist, and they're both mildly favorable towards civil rights. Truman desegregated the military, for example. JFK gives the forces of immigration liberalization a certain amount of hope. He's kind of linked to immigration a little bit more than the others are. For example, he voted against McCarran-Walter Act, and he voted to sustain Truman's veto of it. And he also ghosted a book called A Nation of Immigrants. He published a book that somebody wrote. His name was on a book. He wrote a book with a lot of help from a ghostwriter called A Nation of Immigrants, which lauded the role in building the nation that the immigrants had played. But on the other hand, he only devoted 2 paragraphs to Asian and Latino immigrants. But the point is that JFK was a little more connected to immigration, not only because of the two things I just mentioned, the book and his stance against McCarran-Walter Act, but also because hard as it is to believe, in 1960, JFK was an ethnic. He's a white ethnic. He was an Irish Catholic. He was the first Catholic to be elected, and his Catholicism was an issue in the 1960 election. So, again, he kind of stood for, his election brought some further attention than to the immigration question. But of course, he also faces the same opposition, and being a Democrat, he was particularly hamstrung by Southern opposition. The Democratic Party is very much beholden to the South, and the South is not very favorable to immigration. Early in the Kennedy administration, the Bracero program expires, despite intense lobbying, and of some importance, it expires due perhaps to civil rights kinds of reasons. Here's what Henry Gonzalez said: "We need the Mexican labor. Why not let him come here in freedom, as our parents did?" So there's a recognition that this guest worker policy is exploitive. And remember, at this point, there's no quota on Western Hemisphere immigration. So the alternative to the Bracero program is people immigrating perhaps legally. I mean, that's the idea, anyway, the way that it is, that it's supposed to unfold. And organized labor, of course, hates the Bracero program, too. Kennedy does propose, before his death, a very mild immigration reform act. It wouldn't really do very much at all, and it didn't get anywhere. It died without even a committee hearing. But Johnson, who came up later, who succeeded Kennedy after Kennedy's assassination, was a very different sort of politician. It's not obvious. It's sort of surprising that Johnson took this up, but he does, and he links immigration reform with the Great Society and with civil rights quite explicitly, wishing to eliminate from this nation every trace of discrimination and oppression based on race and color. Right? Johnson's from Texas, and so he's a Southern Democrat. He is not someone who would obviously be supporting the liberalization of immigration, but he's not he's not a typical politician either. He's an extremely effective politician. And so after 1964 landslide, the old Kennedy bill becomes more sophisticated and becomes the Hart-Celler Act, which is the 1965 Act, and finally passes, along with 79 other Great Society measures. And just imagine what that's like, having seen the healthcare debate drag on for so many months. The idea of passing 79 measures of some of which were very far-reaching consequences, including, for example, the 1965 Immigration Act. Imagine passing that inside one year. What the Hart-Celler Act, 1965, does is it eliminated the nationality quota system, instead replaced it with a 170,000 quota from the Old World and 120,000 from the New World. Right? So, in a sense, these are still quotas, but they didn't call them quotas, I guess, or maybe they did. In any case, the idea is, instead of having a specific quota that's based on the national origins of America, this is no longer something that is trying to maintain the racial and ethnic balance of the United States. That was the point of the nationality quota system. We're going to maintain the national origin distribution as it was in 1920. This is not doing that. This is just saying 170,000 from the Old World, 120,000 from the New, 20,000 max for any Old World country. And there were no national quotas on Western Hemisphere countries. Okay, so it was recognized that most of these migrants were going to come from Mexico. So Mexico is not limited to 20,000 by this act. It will be later on, but at this point it's not. So it sets a higher limit first. That's 190,000 instead of 156, and it does away with the nationalities aspect of it. It adds preference system, just like the McCarran-Walter Act, but it emphasizes family reunification or family unification. And interestingly, as we'll see if you know about how immigration law works today, immigration law today is still based on this 1965 Act. It's been amended in some moderately significant ways, but this idea still exists, where there is a preference system and overall limits. And if you know how it works today, you know that the majority of people come under family reunification. Interestingly, the restrictionists were the ones who wanted the family reunification to be the principle under which people's preferences would be determined, because they thought that as long as undesirable type of people, read Asians, didn't have a lot of family members here, they weren't going to be able to immigrate. Okay, let's take a closer look at how the preference system actually worked. First, exempt spouses, unmarried minor children. So there's no limit at all. Those don't count against the 170,000 or the 120,000 limit. Spouses and children are welcome. Unmarried adult children of U.S. citizens is the first preference category, followed by spouses and unmarried children, permanent resident aliens, and only down here at the third do we get especially gifted scientists and artists. And it's even further down, the sixth preference, where we get skilled and unskilled workers who fill labor shortage needs. So compared to the McCarran-Walter preference system, which remember operated within quotas, this was not. It's much more about family reunification. Who you're related to is much more important here. Only 10%, and it's the third preference for especially gifted scientists. Remember, in the McCarran-Walter Act, 50% were for people who were had useful skills. Here we've got only 10% and 10% for skilled and gifted people, and they're low enough in the category, in the sixth category. It's pretty reasonable to expect that we're not going to see a lot of them. Right? Unlike the McCarran-Walter Act, there's no provision for people who don't fit into any of these categories. That's somewhat interesting. But there is a preference category for refugees. So this is really the first hint of making refugees part of the immigration system, of a regular scheme for allowing refugees to enter. Refugees are still defined in terms of escaping from communism. They're not defined in terms of, as they are today. It's pure communism. Fascinatingly and ironically, Lyndon Johnson said on signing, "This bill we signed today is not a revolutionary bill. It does not affect the lives of millions. It will not reshape the structure of our daily lives." He could not have been more wrong. This bill ushered in a new era of large-scale immigration that has very much changed our day-to-day, our daily lives. Johnson was not known for modesty about his legislative accomplishments, so I think he really believed this. That it really wasn't going to have a big effect. And as we said, this idea that you had to, in order to get in, you had to be, it looked like it was going to be important to be related to somebody in the U.S. And of course, if you didn't have family here, how were you going to get family here? It turns out it didn't work that way. Let's move on. As we see, in particular, Asian immigrants will use the employment preferences first, but it won't take long before the policy shifts and we see much more family reunification. Once a few scientists and engineers immigrate, pretty soon their children and then relatives and so on. And this leads to one of these very interesting and important effects of it, is the brain drain. Well, actually, first, increasing numbers of immigrants. As you see from between 1960 and 1980, we see essentially a doubling of the number of immigrants each year. And we also see an increasing, among Asians, we'll see an increase in the proportion who are coming under family reunification. In the beginning, lots and lots were scientists and engineers. In 1972, 86% of scientists and engineers, 90% of doctors who immigrated to the U.S. were from developing countries. So if you were an immigrant doctor, you probably came from a less developed country if you immigrated in 1972. We also saw we believe a growth in the illegality of migration from Mexico, but not necessarily in more actual migrants. The brain drain is driven certainly by a lack of opportunity in Asian countries. But after 1980, as we see, it's overshadowed by occupational preferences. This speaks to the other half of the brain drain problem, is that in many Asian countries, India in particular comes to mind, there was a great deal of investment in higher education, and much less so in primary education in this period. And so India would turn out doctors and engineers who were world class, but there were very few jobs for doctors and engineers in India. There were lots and lots of jobs in California. And we see that's a whole lot of 1965. We see the entrants are very, very much occupational preference driven. There's some other fancy statistics, but my favorite is, anecdotally, the country that is right now suffering the biggest brain drain is Iran, losing 150,000 to 200,000 a year. And I have this quote, which was cited in Wikipedia, so you know it's got to be true, from Ayatollah Khomeini. They say there's a brain drain. Let these decayed brains flee. Do not mourn them. Let them pursue their own definitions of being. Is every brain with what you call science honorable? Shall we sit and mourn the brains that escaped? Shall we worry about these brains fleeing to the US and UK? Let these brains flee and be replaced by more appropriate brains. Okay, why don't we stop here and pick it up on Friday with the third phase, the Carter-Reagan phase of the Cold War.